We're in a series called Ripple Effect, and we've been taking a look at different people that are able to cause a ripple effect in a positive way. The statement we've been kind of unpacking every week is what you celebrate, people aspire to. So during this series, what we want to do is we want to celebrate people who have made a huge difference and how it's affected people in their own lives, but whole cultures and even generations to come. Obviously, we started this series with mothers. And so that was who makes a bigger difference than a mother. But today, we're going to talk about Memorial Day. We're going to talk about people who make a huge difference and have and continue to do so. You know, Americans have a lot to celebrate. We have all kinds of festivals and celebrations throughout the year. You know, you can always tell the foundations of a country based on the kinds of things they celebrate. For instance, our big ones are Easter, Christmas, Thanksgiving. It's funny that Americans really celebrate those things because we try to act as though this country wasn't founded on Christianity and faith, yet every big celebration's roots came from Christianity. Would you agree? You know, we do have so much to celebrate, but it's also important that we get to the true meaning of celebration and why we celebrate those things. What's behind it? You know, Christmas, it was meant to be centered on Christ and what he had done for us. Of course, we changed it and sapped it of its meaning when we said Christmas was about Kris Kringle, not Christ. Easter, we said it was about a bunny rabbit and spring break. Thanksgiving, it was about the Indians rather than the pilgrims thanking God for what he had done. We take the celebrations, we slightly tweak the meanings so that it's easier for non-Christian people to kind of grasp and hold on to. But ultimately, we as Christians know how this country was started. Our founding fathers, what they believed. Memorial Day is an important time. I don't know if you saw this, but they came out with a poll yesterday that I heard that only 30% of Americans know that what Memorial Day is really all about. They think it's about a 3-day weekend. 30% understand that it's really about honoring our servicemen and women who have sacrificed for freedom. Only 30% of Americans. But what Memorial Day weekend really is all about is the fact that yes, we have much to celebrate, but Memorial focuses in on why we have those celebrations, how we got them, and how we protect them. Memorial Day weekend really focuses in on what it cost us to have them. And so it's an important weekend to celebrate. The word memorial means to bring to remembrance. And one of the things that I believe is that if you were to look at the Old Testament and Hebrew history, Jewish history, there's a lot there that parallels what we deal with in America, honestly, for me. You can actually look at how God started the Jewish nation and how he chose some people and he maneuvered history and he asked some guys to join him. And so the Israelite nation was born through these people and God worked in all that. And then slowly but surely people forgot who they were and backed away from their source. And it led to disintegration. And when I look at America, I see us the same way, that God did something in the beginning, and some people stepped out in faith and joined God in what he was doing, and so we were elevated. This place is special. And then over time, it's possible that we're forgetting and starting down the path of disintegration, theoretically. I'm going to read you a passage of Scripture. I want you to know that God, being our Creator, thinks that remembering is a very important thing. I want to read this to you. This is in Joshua chapter 4. And if you know the story, God created the earth. It fell because of sin, rebellion. God started to work on the behalf of people along the way. He chose Abraham to start a new nation with. And then there was Isaac and Jacob had a kid named Joseph, and Joseph gets sold into slavery, finds himself in Egypt, and so the end of Genesis has Joseph and his whole family in Egypt in a privileged status. But over time, the Egyptians forgot all about who Joseph was, and they saw this growing population as a nemesis, and they forced the Israelites into slavery. God then sent Moses, and Moses came and got the people, and God did miraculous signs, and Moses led the people across the desert to the promised land. When they got there, they rebelled again, so God kind of led them around on a detour until most of those who had rebelled died, and then Moses leads them back to the promised land, but he dies before he goes in, and Joshua takes over. And now Joshua is ready to lead them into the promised land, and between them and the promised land is the Jordan River. So God says, I'm going to take you across the Jordan River the same way I took you across the sea. I'm going to open it up for you just to show you that I'm opening this up for you. I'm in the middle of it. I have power, and you're going to remember this. And so here's what God told Joshua to do, and Joshua then relayed it to the people. So Joshua called together the 12 men he had chosen, one from each of the tribes of Israel. He told them, go into the middle of the Jordan in front of the ark of the Lord your God. Each of you must pick up one stone and carry it out on your shoulder. 12 stones in all, one for each of the 12 tribes of Israel. So Joshua elected a leader, a representative from each of the 12 tribes there to grab a stone as they walked through the water. He says this, verse 6, we will use these stones to build a memorial in the future, for your children will ask you, what do these stones mean? Then you can tell them, they remind us that the Jordan River stopped flowing when the ark of the Lord's covenant went across. These stones will stand as a memorial among the people of Israel forever. And so I want you to understand that God's idea was that we as human beings constantly need to be reminded. He said, listen, I'm going to set up this altar. There's going to be these stones that you're going to be able to look at. And someday kids are going to go, what are those stones about? And you're going to get the chance to explain what God did. He didn't just have stones there in that one place. Many times throughout Israel's history, they would build an altar to remember something that God had done. God set up festivals, the Passover, the Feast of Tabernacles, the Pentecost. All of these festivals were designed to teach children and to remind adults that God had done something special. Because people so easily forget. So again, remembering is God's idea. What does remembering do? Well, there's a couple of things. First, I want you to understand that remembering causes you to remember where you came from and where you could be had God not intervened. Do you hear that? It reminds you of where you came from, what it used to be like, and where you could be had God not intervened. You know, Americans, again, we so often take for granted what we've got. Much of our current generation, it was just handed to them. And so they don't really understand. One of the things that I love to do is to take kids especially on missions trips. I love them to see what the rest of the world is like. I go around the world and I get to speak, and I'm reminded every time of what would have happened had not God intervened and people agreed to join God in that journey. Last week, I told you it was very convicting to hear that the missionaries would walk 15, 20 miles each way to go to church and to go to small group. And that small group leaders from all over would walk after work, 15, 20 miles, and then walk back because, they didn't have cars. They were so poor. One of our guys this last week was telling me that he had one of the African missionaries with him, and he took him to his house. And this guy, this house, it's nice, but it's not, super nice. And so they walked in the front door, and this missionary from Africa just stood at the front door. And so he starts kind of walking him around, and he says, "Why do you have 2 refrigerators?" He had to explain kind of what a refrigerator is all about the first time. Now he's explaining he's got 2 of them. And he's going through all this. He said, by the time it's over, he's like, "Man, I'm just like, get me out of my house. I got to get out of here." John Givens, one of our elders, he's been gone for 9 months because he was a reservist who got called to help run a hospital in Afghanistan. So he's back finally. And I'm so glad that he's back and God protected him. But he was telling us even this morning, he goes, "You just have no idea. This is where we were. This is where we could be." See, most of us, we can't remember where George Washington came from. We can't remember what it was like for the early Americans. So we don't understand the religious persecution and all the different things that they were dealing with and all the stuff that was different and the battles they had to fight. We can't remember that because we weren't there. We can reflect on it, but we can look around the rest of the world and go, wow, we are in a favored place. We have things that other people don't have. And so, as believers, that's part of what remembering does. It reminds us that we're in favored status, that God did do something. But it doesn't just remind us of that, it reminds us of what God did to change things. That God did some things to change things. One of the things that we Christians ought to do, in my opinion, is wash ourselves of the world's perspective. Remember, we said this last week, so often people celebrate the wrong things, right? We do. Part of coming in here is to get cleansed, to say, God, wash away all the world's perspective and help us to see the most important things. Give us your perspective. And one of the things that it's important to me that we do today is we don't just celebrate men and women who gave up their life and forget that God had a part to play in America's history. People have a tendency when they do celebrate something to celebrate even positive things, but they don't get as much out of it as they could, to not celebrate the true meaning of it. And one of the things that we want to do as believers is, yes, let's celebrate Memorial Day, but let's celebrate it in its fullness, not just partially going, we had guys and women who died. As if it was men and women who did all of the work and who did all of the great things that gave us our rights. Let's celebrate our God who worked on our behalf, who chose America in this time and this place to be the largest mission-sending country in the entire world. I was thinking about this in John 6, Jesus had done miracles. And he had fed the 5,000, and now the people are coming to him going, "Show us another miracle. How do we know you are who you say you are? Show us more miracles." And so again, Jesus had just done a miracle, and now they want more. They just want more. More. It reminds me of that commercial. We want more. And so they said in John 6:30, they answered, "Show us a miraculous sign if you want us to believe in you. What can you do? After all, our ancestors ate manna while they journeyed through the wilderness. The scriptures say Moses gave them bread from heaven to eat." But Jesus said, "I tell you the truth, Moses didn't give you bread. My Father did." What had they done? They had elevated Moses. But did Moses give bread, or did Moses just follow God's lead? And when God said, "I want you to do this," Moses said, "Do this." God said, "I want you to ask me for bread." Moses said, "Okay, may I have bread, please?" And God said, "Well, yes." You can. Again, so often, if we're going to get the most out of Memorial Day, we need to remember it is God who is the one who directs the hearts of kings. God moves people here, moves people there, because he has a greater picture. If we're going to get the most out of Memorial Day, we can't forget that God had a place in America's history. But we do want to honor that there were men and women who played a part in all of this. People partnered with God, responded to God, believed God, and acted in faith. And in much of American history, it was godly people who chose to say yes to God. Oftentimes we celebrate the person, but we don't accept the motivation that caused the person to do what they did. For instance, we all accept that George Washington was our first president. He was a great general who did great things so that we could have a free country. And we accept him as being a great leader, and there are monuments to him in Washington, D.C. But we forget that George Washington believed the Bible was the Word of God. He believed in freedom and unalienable rights endowed by the Creator. Where did he get his views? From the Bible. He was a God-fearing, Bible-believing, committed follower of Jesus who spent hours a day sacrificing time and to say, Jesus, here I am, use me. We want to celebrate George Washington, but we want to forget why George Washington did what he did. Abraham Lincoln. We want to celebrate that he said, listen, all men are created equal in the image of God, and there's no black or white. We are people. And he was willing to sacrifice and stand against his own party and stand against other people's party and even risk his own life. In fact, he was killed by people who disagreed with his view. And we want to celebrate Abraham Lincoln, and there are movies about him, but none of them dive into the depth of his faith in Jesus Christ. Where did he get those views? Where did he get the power? Why was he willing to risk his life? Well, because he believed the Bible, and that if he died down here doing God's will, he would live for eternity. You are going to see Abraham Lincoln standing with Jesus when we get there. And so we want to celebrate Abraham Lincoln, but we want to forget what motivated him. Martin Luther King. We have a holiday for Martin Luther King, and we want to talk about how he did such great things, and he did. He risked his life, and he paid with his life. But we want to forget his faith in Jesus Christ. Even in our sports world, there's a movie out right now about Jackie Robinson, and what a great movie, I'm sure. I've seen all the documentaries, and I'm sure, but I can guarantee you this, I haven't seen it, but they will downplay Jackie's faith in Jesus Christ. Every day he spent hours with Jesus, which gave him the strength to put up with people spitting on him and saying horrible things and threatening his life. Why did he do that? Well, this world wasn't all there was. He's a Christ follower who loved Jesus, a committed follower of Jesus. And so here's what I want to say. If we're going to get the most out of Memorial Day, we don't just celebrate the acts itself. People sacrificed. Listen, we want to celebrate that God had something to do with this, and that there were people who said, you know what? I believe in protecting the innocent. I believe in protecting our right for religious freedom. I believe there were people who gave their life on the field of battle, and they did it honorably. They didn't kill because they liked it. They didn't kill because they learned how to do it, so that they could have a job and their college would be paid for. They did it because they believed and they stepped out in faith. Now, I grant that not everyone who has died for their country died because they had a faith in Jesus Christ. But I will say this, what we honor, what we Christians do, is we come together and we say, we honor, we remember where we came from as a country. The hand of God was in it. People responded to him by faith, and they fought, whether it was in our political halls, honorable men, whether it was on the field of battle, whether it was a parent who raised their child and said, yes, go, defend righteousness, protect the poor in our country and another country. We believe in that. We live for that. We remember. And so why? Why Memorial Day? 3 things. So we don't take for granted what we have. We remember where we could be and remember what could have happened but didn't because of God's work and people bravely, faithfully stepping in. Secondly, we celebrate this so that our children can see true heroes, and we celebrate those who are honorable and godly and laid down their lives rather than got as much of the world as they could and said, look at me, it's all about me, beat their chests, whatever. The real love, real heroes are people who laid down their lives for other people. And we celebrate that in our culture because, listen, the rest of the world isn't going to teach that. 70% of Americans don't know how we got here or where we came from. But we Christians remember. And we celebrate greatness so that our people will aspire to it. And thirdly, I want to close with the saddest verse to me in the scriptures. Joshua dies, and a new leadership raises up. And it's in Judges chapter 2. And the Israelites served the Lord throughout the lifetime of Joshua and the leaders who outlived him, those who had seen all the great things the Lord had done for Israel. Joshua, son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110. They buried him in the land that had been allocated at Timnath-Serah at the hill country of Ephraim, north of Mount Gash. And after that generation died, another generation grew up, who did not acknowledge the Lord or remember the mighty things he had done for Israel. You know, the saddest thing is, that meant that those rocks, those pillars, those festivals that were designed to help people remember so that therefore they could stay on track. Remember who we are. If you don't know how you got there, then you won't know when you lost it or how you lost it. No, those markers were there to remind them so they could go, here's where we came from, here's what God does, and this is where we're going. Those markers were everywhere. That rock pile was right there next to the Jordan, but it was unvisited. It was unremembered. And that generation went from privileged status for the purpose of glorifying God to becoming slaves again and to losing all of those blessings. As believers, we are salt and light. Our job is to preserve and to bring light to the truth. And even if the rest of the world does not go with us, we as believers honor God, and we honor people who have said, yes, I will be faithful and I will lay down my life for righteousness. We celebrate them, and we thank you today for your part if you're a veteran in this room right now. Thank you. We're going to close today, and we are going to give you an opportunity to say yes to Jesus. Jesus was a great warrior. In fact, if you go to Isaiah 53, it says that when he had laid down his life, he was like a soldier, it calls him, who had laid down his life. He had fought the right fight. He had said, listen, if I'm going to win back the world, it won't be with my power to destroy. It will be with my love, so they see my heart and they know me. Jesus came so that you could know the heart of God. It is true that he will come back the second time as a warrior to fight, as a lion, but he came as a lamb the first time to say to you, I love you. If you're not a believer, we want you to know Jesus. We want to give you stability in Christ. I'm going to ask you to bow your heads right now. I don't know where you're at. That bulletin is used, or that connections card and decision card are used every week for prayer requests. People make all kinds of decisions to get in small groups, to break addictions. But every week, somebody writes on one of those cards, I need Jesus. And we get to call them. Every week, people write down prayer requests. If you have something you need to say to the Lord, will you say it now? Those who'd like to sit, you continue to sit. Those who would like to stand and worship the Lord as we close today, then please do that. If you'd like to talk or pray with somebody today, we're going to be waiting up here. We would love to talk and pray with you, especially about accepting Jesus today. Those who would like to stand, would you stand? Those who would like to come, would you come?